Welcome. I am your host, Manpreet, aka MMA Lock of the Night, and your boy on Twitter at MMA LOT, and joined by my guy John Stargarian. You guys can follow him at MMA Fox on Twitter. And we are here propping you up for UFC Vegas 42, headlined by Max Holloway and Yair Rodriguez, a fight that we've been looking forward to for a long time, which is hilarious because we have a minus 600 on one side, but we still believe that it should be a fun fight no matter how long it lasts. John, been a couple weeks since I've not had your services here on the Propping You Up show. How's it been going over the last couple weeks, and what are your thoughts on this upcoming card?
Well, it's probably good for you and for everybody else watching the show that you didn't have me on last week. Otherwise, people might demand you throw me off the show. That's why I'm wearing the square hat today, you know?
Oh, I like it. Look at that reveal, guys. Look at that reveal. I love it.
But yeah, other than, the disaster that was last week, it's been going well. In terms of this card, it's a weird main event in that I don't really see, there are not a lot of angles for betting. You don't usually get main events on a fight night where one side is minus 700. But at the same time, it's also a fight where I think we're pretty reliable to see, a really fun fight where everybody is going to be, where it's just going to be a firefight, right? They're just going to throw back and forth the entire fight until someone dies. And the guy dying is probably going to be Yair, but I'm excited for it.
Yeah, very much looking forward to that. There are a couple other intriguing matchups throughout the card.
Yeah.
Only 11 fights compared to like the 13, 14, and 15 we've been getting over the last couple weeks. So we should be able to rifle through this pretty easily today. I do want to quickly go over the three best prop bets that all three of us had last week. Me and John pretty much shit the bed there. So I went 0 of 3. I had Gary via sub, goes out there and knocks the kid out. Osborne via sub. Have no reasoning for that performance whatsoever. I think everybody lost on the under 2.5, and the fight doesn't go to decision in that fight. And then Edgar via decision, which he probably would have lost the decision had it gone the full 15 minutes. But we got a great first round out of him. But after that, it seemed to go all downhill. For John, he went 0 of 3 as well. He had Edgar via decision as well as Osborne inside the distance, similar to myself. And then he also had Michailidis inside the distance. Sure, it didn't play out the way you wanted it to, right?
Not exactly. Not exactly, no.
Thankfully, our Lord and Savior, Mr. Cody Safnik, went 2-1 on his plays. He only missed on Gaethje via KO, which, again, that's a bad beat considering how that fight fucking went. But he did cash on Curtis KO plus 650, and then they also cashed on Burgos and Quarantillo. Fight goes to the decision. I think that was roughly around even money at that time. So great picks from props from him as well. You want to add something, John?
You know what the crazy thing about that card is that had Edgar survived the last minute and won a decision, I would have ended up with a profit for the night. And instead, I took like my worst loss of the year.
Ouch. Ouch. I saw that picture that Andrew from Andrew Gomez Bets tweeted out saying anytime you guys get together, you guys have like your worst betting nights of the year.
I've only lost 10 units twice in like the last 2 years, and both times have been me and Andrew hanging out.
I don't think you guys should hang out. I'm just throwing it out there. The trend is not that great when you guys hang out. So just saying that. All right. Let's not waste too much more time. Let's get into this card. Like I said, 11 flights slate, not to mention early start time, 2 p.m. Eastern, prelim start time on Saturday. Nice and early for us East Coasters. I guess even earlier for you West Coasters. But I love these fight night cards. Now they're finally making it a little bit earlier in the day so we can still go out in the evening and be human beings with a social life. Shout out to the UFC for looking out for us. All right, 2 p.m. Eastern start time, and we're going to be kicking things off in the light heavyweight division between Kennedy Nzechukwu and Da Un Jung. In terms of odds, we're currently looking at minus 120-ish for the Korean and plus 100 for Kennedy Nzechukwu. Close fight. Obviously, the odds replicate or indicate that. I do lean the Jung side here. I do think he's a slightly better fighter overall. Kennedy Nzechukwu, in my opinion, is still a little bit green in certain instances. He has durability. He has hard, say what you want. That Carlos Ulberg fight was crazy, the back and forth nature of it. And then obviously him coming out on top in that second round. What was the fight before that against, it was Danilo Marquez last time he actually got out of there. Then it was Carlos Ulberg. And then before that was that Darko Stosic fight, which was, a shit show and a half to begin with. Good length, still developing, but I feel like there could be some holes in his game that Da Un Jung should be able to go out there and exploit. Maybe, wear on him, clinch him up against the cage, drag him to the ground if he wants to. We saw his grinding ability in that fight against William Knight. Maybe if he brings that here against Kennedy Nzechukwu, he can find some success as well. I do lean on the Jung side, not so much for a bet in terms of a prop. I do think he could. I feel like he could wear on him and possibly get him out of there. Jung by TKO is plus 550, which I think is a little bit crazy, especially considering it's a light heavyweight fight. We've seen him starch dudes in the past, so he definitely does have power in his hands if he's able to connect correctly. But yeah, I will go with Jung inside the distance or Jung by TKO plus 550, plus 340 on those respectively. What are your thoughts on this specific matchup?
Yeah, so it's kind of funny because, Luke on my podcast, he came on last night. So before, I'll just back up a second. So before, I went on my podcast last night, I didn't really do that much tape on this fight because I'm pretty familiar with both of their games. Just like I don't really want to get involved here. It seems like a mess that I'm not going to really want to have money on. And so I basically gave my breakdown. Luke got on late and he made a pretty compelling case for Jung. So I was like, oh, you know what? That's interesting. So we got off the pod last night and I did a pretty deep dive on it on tape. The funny thing is, even though Luke's very sharp and he made a very compelling case for Jung, I actually came out of tape actually liking Kennedy a decent bit, to be honest with you. Now, I don't know that I'm going to play him now at like plus 100. I might. I'm not really sure. I would have played him plus 140 where he was for a while. But I guess, when I'm looking at this fight, the interesting thing here is, first of all, I guess the memories I have of Jung striking, the most distinct ones had been him knocking out Rodriguez. And it's like you tend to forget about the Alvi fight because, it ended in a draw. But, Jung really does not, he has a nice jab. And when he does decide to throw in combination, it's pretty nice. But he really has very bad defense on the feet. Anytime someone lets their hands go, he drops his left hand whenever he's in the pocket. And, you saw Cadiz early in that fight really get off against him big. And I had remembered it as Cadiz, not really landing much, but he was landing pretty heavy and he was hitting him flush a bunch of times. You saw the same thing with the Alvi fight every time Jung would enter the pocket. And then even in his last fight against, William Knight, in the round 3 of that fight, Knight's just spamming overhand rights, and he is not doing anything to stop them from landing. They're just landing over and over again until he takes him down. Now, he won that fight from the wrestling, and that was one of the reasons I initially was like, I don't have that much interest in Kennedy. But going back and looking at it, I honestly didn't find his wrestling very impressive. It was a lot of just clinching up and then outside trips that Knight just didn't have an answer for. And then once they got to the mat, Knight just didn't. He was trying to sweep him and not doing a good job working up. Jung doesn't really put hooks in. And I know, we saw Kennedy kind of get out grappled in his last fight, but, he was getting held down because Marquez was putting in a body triangle on him, right? He was taking the back, putting hooks in, throwing in a body triangle to control him. But, he doesn't accept bottom position. He's going to work up right away. Stasic couldn't keep him down at all. Craig really couldn't keep him down at all either. And, like I mentioned, most of Jung's takedowns, they come from that, clinch and outside trip. But Kennedy's actually pretty strong in that position. He does a good job pummeling from underhooks, turning the position. So, I don't really see much of a grappling path from Jung. And standing, yeah, I think Jung is the more technical striker for sure. He's got a nicer jab. He's got a nicer offensive boxing game. But what we know from Kennedy, I mean, that Carlos Ulberg fight was fucking crazy. Ulberg landed 146 strikes in 8 minutes of that fight. That is fucking nuts. And if you recall, what actually gassed Ulberg out was he unloaded like a 40-strike body combination on him that Kennedy just didn't even flinch from. It was, Herb Dean's threatening to stop the fight, and Kennedy's just okay, puts his hands down, just starts going forward again. I'm like, what the hell is this guy made of? And so, I expect Jung can have plenty of offensive success. The problem is, like I mentioned, he's poor at defense. And Kennedy himself, once he starts letting his hands go, he'll throw a lot too. I don't think he's a big hitter, but he'll go forward and he will throw and throw and throw. And so, looking at the fight, I'm like, I've seen Jung back up and cover up, when Cadiz was going after him. I think, that's probably going to happen here between the two cardio-wise. I'm not saying I haven't seen much reason to suspect Jung has bad cardio, but we also haven't really seen it tested, right? Sam Alvey is going to give him a low-volume kickboxing match. The William Knight fight, yeah, he grappled for 3 rounds, but Knight was providing almost zero resistance on the mat. So it's how cardio taxing is that? I'm not really sure. So it's I think they're going to swing a lot in this fight, and I trust Kennedy's durability a bit more. I trust his cardio a bit more. Look, Jung's the more clean technical striker, but I think Kennedy can match him on output, and I think he's going to have opportunities to hurt him and back him up. So, I kind of think Kennedy should be a small favorite here. What I will say, though, in terms of props, and something that I think is pretty interesting, like I mentioned, Cadiz was landing heavy against him, as was Knight, and both of them hit reasonably hard. And Jung seems to have a rock-solid chin. Alvey hits hard, too, and Jung was not getting deterred coming into the pocket. I don't think Kennedy hits as hard as Alvey does. I actually think Kennedy by decision at about plus 300 is pretty good. And I also think, if you want to take a little less risk in the fight, I think fight goes the distance at even money is a pretty good look, to be honest. I don't think either guy is very likely to end this fight. To be honest, I'm probably going to play that. I think this is closer to like a 70% goes the distance kind of thing, unless Jung just gasses out. So, yeah.
Of course, we can depend on you to make a case for a guy like Kennedy Nzechukwu. But of course, I understand it. The line is very close, and I can understand arguments from both sides here. I'm going to be on the Korean side, but again, I'll likely have almost no money on this fight.
Yeah.
Just again, very close fight. A lot of volatility, in my opinion, as well, considering the type of way these guys go out there and fight. All right, let's move on to the next fight. We got Mark Diakiese going up against Rafael Alves, minus 185 right now on Diakiese and plus 160 on Rafael Alves. And I do like me some Diakiese in this spot. He did have some pretty good potential when he came into the UFC, and then he fell on some hard times against guys like Dan Hooker and Nasrat Haqparast. Then he put together very good victories over Joe Duffy and Lando Venado. A lot of that was based on his newfound love for calf kicking, right? That's something that he was able to implement very effectively in those fights, almost render his opponents immobile, and then after that kind of let his hands going, let his volume go, because he was just a little bit more confident with the state that he had his opponents in. And then he ran into Rafael Fiziev, right? If there's anybody that knows how to check some calf kicks and make it a little bit more difficult for you to implement that type of game plan, it's a guy like Rafael Fiziev, and we obviously saw how that fight ended up playing out. Luckily for Mark Diakiese, he has Rafael Alves in front of him now, who, very explosive fighter. We saw what he was able to do in his UFC debut as a plus 400 underdog against a guy like Damir Ismagulov. He goes out there and hurts him early in that first round, but then gets taken down and gets controlled the majority of that. And then in the third round, goes out there and has a damn good third round. Not a lot of people would have predicted that, especially considering what kind of style and gas tank we've kind of seen from him in the past. He's usually good at getting his opponents out of there within the first 2 rounds, but if he is ever extended in his fights, he does seem to slow down a lot. Not so much in that Damir Ismagulov fight, which was a bit of a surprise to me. But here, against a guy like Mark Diakiese, who has great cardio himself, I think he should be able to go out there and implement another calf kick game plan. I think if he goes out there and just tries to really beat up that lead wheel of Alves, it will take the power and explosiveness off those shots from Alves, and then it should allow Diakiese to continue to go to work. Diakiese did show some decent improvements over his last couple fights in terms of takedowns and just having an overall MMA game, but we know his bread and butter is that striking game, and I think he's going to be able to kind of deal with that early storm from Alves, really invest in that calf kick, that leg kick, and then really start to, up the output, up the volume, and up the confidence the later that this fight goes. So I like Diakiese. I'd kind of be surprised if he finishes Alves. Alves, again, seems to have improved cardio, but we'll see if he can continue to keep it up, if he's able to go to back-to-back third rounds here. I'm going Diakiese by decision, which is roughly around plus 120. That's the spot that I like here. How do you feel about this matchup, John?
So, little tangent about Mark Diakiese. You want to know he's only been an underdog once in his career, and it was against Joseph Duffy. Listen to some of these lines throughout Diakiese's career. Minus 190 against Dan Hooker, closing line. Minus 175 against Nasrat Haqparast, closing line. Minus 175 against Lando Venado, closing line. Minus 220 against Rafael Fiziev, closing line. And now he's about minus 185 against Rafael Alves, who is a substantial step down from those guys, I would say. I guess in terms of this fight, I like Diakiese here. He hasn't quite lived up to in the UFC what I thought he would be. I was pretty high on him coming in because you can see it. When he goes out there and does things. He's got elite athleticism. He's very fast. He came into the UFC with the nickname Bone Crusher. It turns out he doesn't hit as hard as it looked like he hit on the regional scene, but I think he's a fairly well-rounded fighter. He's a decent boxer. Like you mentioned, he has great calf kicks. He's very fast, and he's a great athlete. And on the other side, it's like you've Rafael Alves, who, look, obviously he's got a tight guillotine, and he seems to hit hard. But, it's what I kind of like in Alves, too, is just a guy who athletes people when he wins fights. It's on his athleticism. The problem is here, he's fighting a better athlete who actually is just much better at fighting than he is. Alves, could he hurt him and finish him in theory? Yeah, he could. But I saw Diakiese take huge shots from Rafael Fiziev and not really get bothered by it. Same thing with Haqparast. So it's I don't think the chances of him finding a finish are that likely. I guess he could snatch a guillotine here and finish him that way. But ultimately, it's just Alves doesn't really throw strikes. I don't see any minute winning ability from him here. I don't think he can go out there and put on a 3-round wrestling clinic. I just don't think he has the gas for it. I don't. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, my thing is if Alves doesn't hurt him in multiple rounds, I struggle to see how he wins a decision here. And on top of that, I just can't rate a finish as much more than like, a 15 to 20% outcome. And so with that being the case, I kind of think Diakiese should win this fight fairly easily. Alves is a wide stance, should play right into the leg kick game of Diakiese. He's going to be a lot more active. He's fought way better competition. I played him at minus 160. I do think the minus 185 is still kind of playable. Like I think he's about 70% in this spot. And I actually kind of like Diakiese by decision, to be honest with you, especially if you can get that plus 140. He's not a big finisher, like I mentioned, and I do think you can pretty much take sub off the table here. So I think that's a pretty good look. You're probably getting an even money or even 55% look on the decision for Diakiese. So yeah, I mean, that's how I lean here.
Yeah, I'm glad we're on the same side there. Again, Alves seems to be a little bit more of a flash in the pan kind of guy. If he's able to get you out of there early, great. If not, I think he's not going to be able to cut it on this UFC scene. Shout out to my guy Andrew here. Noticing the Theo Von hoodie, I want to quickly just show it to you guys. It says Hitler, not Hitler. I've had some people saying it looks like it says Hitler. Obviously, it's a little bit sketchy based on how the microphone is positioned and all that type of stuff. But if you know, you know. I don't support Hitler. Just saying that. All right. Let's move on to the next fight here. We got Courtney Casey going up against Liana Jojua. In terms of odds, when are you ever going to see Courtney Casey as a minus 240 favorite? But that's exactly what she is here. Going up against Liana Jojua, and the return on that fight or on her is plus 200. I don't have many strong thoughts about this fight, John. I'll keep it nice and sweet here. Jojua, it seems like her best path to victory is like getting armbar from guard, like the Diana Belbita fight. That's kind of where her bread and butter is. I know she's been spending time over there at Serra-Longo, really trying to diversify her training compared to just going out there. I believe it was in Georgia that she was training. But yeah, it seems like she's going to be out MMA'd in a sense here against a girl like Courtney Casey, who should be the better striker, albeit not by much. Maybe the better jiu-jitsu player as well if this fight does hit the ground. And then obviously the length that Leon is going to have to deal with here, 3-inch height advantage as well as a 3 or 4-inch reach advantage as well. In Casey's case, not like Casey's a master at distance management or anything like that, but it will cause Jojua a little bit of issues in terms of trying to close the distance. I like Casey here. In terms of the prop, I do think we see it go the full 15. There is a possibility that one of these chicks pulls off an armbar from guard type of situation, which is why I wouldn't get overly invested in this fight, especially from the over perspective or even a Courtney Casey via decision perspective, which currently sits at plus 115. But I got to say that's probably my favorite prop for this fight is Casey by decision and the overs. How do you feel about this one?
Yeah, I mean, I largely think, honestly, I think the money line could even be wider if I'm being completely honest. I mentioned last night, but if this got back down to minus 200 or even a little under, I actually might even take the stab at Courtney Casey. The reason I'm not really willing to up here is just because, it's the glaring obvious hole in Courtney Casey's game that she's easy to take down and she'll play guard on the bottom. But, even if that happens here, I kind of think she's pretty likely to outscramble Jojua on the ground. I do think she's the better grappler and likely be fine there. And I think she's the better striker by a large amount. I mean, look at the girls that Courtney Casey's been having, competitive striking matches with. Jojua is not even close to that level. Plus, Jojua is kind of gassy too. So, yeah, I think Casey handles her on the feet with relative ease. And on the mat, look, again, that's a concern. And she is training at Serra-Longo, like you mentioned. And so I would expect – if she wants to win this fight and stay in the UFC, that Jojua is going to come out here, try to dive on legs and hold her down. I don't know how much success she'll have with it. I don't anticipate she'll have much. So I think Casey should really win this fight kind of however she wants. What I do think is an interesting look, especially because I mentioned she's gassy. And, what I will say, despite Casey's willingness to play guard, Casey's not she is constantly looking for a finish on the mat. So it's like she hits reasonably hard for a female fighter. And she's going to be looking for a finish against a girl who's quite hittable, who is a bit gassy, and who is not as good a grappler, in my opinion. I actually don't think the Casey ITD is a bad look if you can get it around plus 300, plus 275. I'm not passionate about it. I'm not really passionate about anything on this fight, but I do think, the level gap here is big enough that, Casey hindsight finishing this at a decent clip wouldn't really surprise me.
Yeah, one thing that wouldn't surprise me is if Jojua actually grapple fucks her here, right? Gets the takedowns and just lays on top of her. That's why I'm like, why would I
She
pay
has to
minus
do, right?
240 on Casey here? Why?
Yeah,
Don't do it. At least in my
that's what she
opinion.
has
But
to do.
yeah, exactly. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. We got Sean Woodson going up against Colin Anglin. In terms of odds, we got chalk, which seems to be regularity now for Sean Woodson at minus 325 plus 265, the return on Colin Anglin. And I feel like I have a decent enough case for Anglin here as a pretty big dog, and I actually might end up taking the shot here. Now, Woodson, this is going to be a second straight fight where he's going up against a Factory X guy. Obviously, last time around, he went up against Yusuf Zalal, and Zalal was only able to win one round off of him. But that one kind of path seems to almost be live with almost every single opponent that Woodson goes up against, right? They're able to pin him up against the cage and kind of have some success there, but he does a good job in terms of, digging his underhooks, getting off the cage, get back to the center of the cage and getting his output and his volume going, which usually sways the judges back into his favor. But like, Terrence McKinney had like 3 minutes of control time, 3.5 minutes of control time against this guy. We saw Kyle Bachniak have 4.5 minutes of control time against this guy. We saw Yusuf Zalal have 6.5 minutes of control time against this guy. Julian Rosa, only 1 minute of control time, but he was able to match that height, reach, and striking ability of Woodson. And then he really started to put the pace on Woodson, eventually getting him out of there in that third round. With Colin Anglin, it's interesting because so I heeded Mr. James Krause's advice in this because he's very knowledgeable about both these guys, right? Woodson used to be out
Coaches
of
Woodson,
glory.
right?
He used to. So actually, he's not a part of that team anymore. But yeah, he coached him for his first two UFC fights. He didn't coach him for the Zalal fight because of the Factory X ties that James has there. But yeah, James pretty much said, we have a very good striker with Woodson, and we have a pretty damn good grappler with the Anglin side of things here. And he feels as though that the odds are way off. And I kind of agree here because if Anglin, in my opinion, slightly better striker than what Zalal brings to the table. Different types of strikers, don't get me wrong, but I do think it's more fitted, especially against a guy like Woodson here, who he should be able to go out there and land some decent strikes against, maybe get some kicks off as well. But if he's able to push him up against the cage and get some control time there, just as other fighters have in the past, but maybe successful with the takedown or two here and there, could sway the judges in his favor. It's hilarious, having a minus 325 favorite, but having those margins where it's just like, if he's pushed up against the cage for a minute longer, he probably loses a round, right? Zalal easily won a round off of him in that first round, but then after that, we saw Woodson start to pick it up. I think Anglin might be able to use it a little bit more successfully here. Like I said, second training camp for Factory X against a guy like Woodson. Got to believe they took some stuff from that Zalal fight and they're going to adjust it and possibly have a better soldier here and then Colin Anglin to go out there and implement those types of those adjustments. I like Anglin here. I know he got knocked out by Baghdasaryan a couple months ago, but like Baghdasaryan is just a cannon and a half, right? Like the head kick that he knocked him out with, we saw Anglin with his guard high, and it still went through the guard and still knocked him out. I'd be surprised if Woodson's going to be able to kind of replicate that type of knockout or something similar to that. So no way I'm playing Woodson at minus 325. Again, I think the kid's talented, great striking, great boxing, obviously, as we know, but there are fights when fighters want to go out there and try to clinch fuck him or grapple fuck him, they can find success. I think Anglin is probably one of the better guys over his last couple of fights that should be able to implement that here. So I do like Anglin. Will likely be taking a shot at him in around that plus 265 slot. Not to mention, we're talking about a Colin Anglin that was only a plus 135 dog to Melsik Baghdasaryan in his last fight, right? Now all of a sudden he gets knocked out. He's a huge underdog to Sean Woodson, which doesn't really make the biggest amount of sense to me. I like Anglin. I like Anglin by decision, which is currently around plus 500-ish, I believe the line is. I might have to take a little bit of a sprinkle there because I think that path to victory is absolutely live in this spot. Anglin by decision. Bring me back to reality because I feel like you're going to bring some credence to the Woodson side here. How do you see this fight going down?
So first of all, you know what's funny and still bothers me to this day? I had 3 units on Jonathan Pierce at plus 400 against Sean Woodson before that fight got canceled.
Damn. That would have been damn. In hindsight,
I feel like Pierce would stomp him, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, look, I don't necessarily disagree with everything you said. I guess, I do think there is going to come a time very soon when someone is going to absolutely bury Woodson as a big dog. Like, I don't, I think the problem you see with Woodson is a lot of guys, he hasn't fought really a complete wrestler yet. And so a lot of guys, they'll try to take him down from the clinch or just drag a single leg off the fence. But it's hard to take down a guy that's that tall if you're not using a double and like turning an angle to get him to like keel over. But I do think the first guy that kind of knows what he's doing chain wrestling wise is going to have a pretty easy time of it. Like Zalal had the right idea. Zalal is just not a very good wrestler. I actually do think Anglin could cause him some problems here, to be honest. I get the bet on Anglin. I think him hitting takedowns is in play. I guess my question with Anglin is really, one, can he control him? And two, can he what kind of resistance is he going to get from Woodson on the bottom? Because I don't know that Anglin has the cardio to push this for 10 to 15 minutes. And I do think on the feet, Woodson's not as complete a striker as Baghdasaryan is, but I think he's got sharper hands than Baghdasaryan is, and it's a lot tougher to close distance against. And so I think he's going to pepper Anglin on the feet. But yeah, I mean, it's a binary fight to me, because if it turns out Anglin has an easy time getting him down and Woodson hasn't worked on his get-up game at all, he could literally look like hindsight like a minus 200 here, right? But the other side of that coin is, like I said, taking Woodson down is a bit tricky. I do think, someone who knows what they're doing is going to get him down pretty easily, and maybe Anglin's that guy. But yeah, I haven't really decided. You made a pretty good case for it, and I've still been like thinking about it, because it is, you only get one chance to fade a guy, right? In these situations, seriously, because if you're right, if you pass on it and he gets bragdoled here, you're not going to get plus 240 against Sean Woodson again, So I don't hate the look there. My worry is just more, I was a little perturbed by Anglin's gas tank regionally, which is why I passed in the Baghdasaryan fight. Because that was a fight where I felt similarly. I'm like, I think Anglin has a decent path here. And then he didn't even really try to wrestle in that fight, which really didn't make a lot of sense to me. So, like, if you tell me for a fact Anglin's going to come out and attempt 8 takedowns in this fight, well, I'm happy to ride on that train. I just don't know if he's going to. I don't think the line is right, though. I would say that. Like, if you're going to bet a money line here, I think you have to bet Anglin. Laying minus 330 with Woodson is not the way. I can tell you that. Like, would not parlay him or anything. I actually kind of like fight doesn't go, to be honest with you. I've seen plus 125 to plus 140 because, like, the dynamic to me is such, if it turns out Anglin is dominant enough in the grappling to win this fight, he's got a fairly good chance to finish Woodson, I think. And if he gasses out, or can't get Woodson down, Woodson's going to hit him a lot in this fight. So I kind of like the doesn't go to distance. I'm not passionate about a side, but like I said, I think you had a good breakdown of it. I think if you're going to take a side here, England is probably the way.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you'll be able to get the submission, but the decision on plus 500, I think, is crazy.
That's crazy.
But even his money line, like plus 260-ish, plus 265, I'm happy with that, and not being as greedy by taking a prop here. But again, if I were to take a prop, it would be the decision prop here. All right, let's move on to the next fight. We got Cynthia Calvillo going up against Andrea Lee. In terms of odds, we're currently sitting at minus 130-ish for Calvillo, plus 110 the return on Andrea Lee. Now, I'm kind of surprised that the odds are a little bit closer, but I'm seeing some pretty good arguments from the Andrea Lee side of things, so I kind of understand it. But I do feel like Cynthia Calvillo should be a wider dog in this fight, and I think the reason that the odds are as close as they are based on the last couple performances from both women. Obviously, Andrea Lee had a very dominant performance against Antonina Shevchenko in her last fight, getting the takedown and then eventually finishing her in that second round. And then on the flip side for Calvillo, she goes out there and gets dusted by Jessica Andrade. But can you really blame her for that, right? Like, it's fucking Jessica Andrade. You expect Andrea Lee to go out there and do that. The Katlyn Chookagian fight, another one where the odds were just very off, in my opinion, where you had Cynthia Calvillo as like a minus 250, minus 260 favorite. I cashed on Chookagian that night because I thought she was a great stylistic matchup. She moves well, her footwork's decent, she uses her range pretty well. And if Calvillo was not able to get takedowns going in that fight, I thought she was going to struggle mightily with Katlyn Chookagian from the outside. And that's exactly what happened. Here against Andrea Lee, though, Andrea Lee may be the better technical striker than Katlyn Chookagian, but in terms of footwork and movement, I think she struggles a little bit, especially in terms of getting out of the way of takedown attempts. And I feel as though Calvillo, got to be a complete dumbass to not go out there and chase takedowns in this fight, because she will likely get outstruck on the feet. But I don't think it's going to be by a huge wide margin where Lee knocks her out or something like that, or gets clear cut 10-9, 10-8 rounds or anything like that. Alfred, hey, quit it. Hey, quit it. Give me one. God damn. But yeah, I do think that Calvillo will likely go out there and chase takedowns in this fight. We saw Roxanne Modafferi obviously very successful with that against Andrea Lee. She timed them perfectly, right? Kind of got Andrea Lee to kind of accept that it could potentially be a striking matchup. And then we see Roxanne go out there and land beautiful counter takedowns. And I think we could see that here from Calvillo as well. Calvillo has pretty much, I believe, in 8 out of 10 fights has landed at least one takedown in her fights. And then on the flip side for Andrea Lee, I think she's given up a takedown in every single one of her fights except her last one against Anthony Shevchenko. So that is a bit of a concern, in my opinion, if you're backing the Andrea Lee side here. So I do think we'll see Calvillo chase some takedowns, get this fight to the ground. And then on the ground, I think Calvillo is probably the best BJJ artist that Andrea Lee has gone up against inside the UFC. You know, say what you want about Roxanne Modafferi and her top pressure and her top control, but in terms of overall jiu-jitsu, I feel like Calvillo is going to be the best that Lee has fought up until this point. Will Calvillo be able to submit her? Maybe. I'm not 100% sure. I'd rather go with the safer route here and take her by decision, which I think is currently sitting around plus 150. But even that money line, man, around that, I got in personally at minus 109. Shout out to Coolbet on in terms of being super slow to adjust their lines. I was able to hop on that line for 2 units myself. Love that spot here for Calvillo. But again, for props, which is what you guys are here for, Calvillo by sub plus 625 is not too shabby. But Calvillo by decision, I think, is how she gets it done, which is plus 140 in the spot. How do you feel about this matchup?
Yeah, so I think I give a bit more credence to the Lee side, to be honest with you. You know, my view on it is kind of, first of all, I bet Calvillo against Jessica Andrade, which was hilariously awful in hindsight. But, you know, that fight was only 5 weeks ago. You know, it was not very long ago. And, you know, it's a pretty quick turnaround for Cynthia. I guess my question is, it's like, is Cynthia going to come out and proactively grapple? It's like she's done it so few times in her career. Like, that's such a concern for me. And if she does, it's like, what do we think? You know, how long is she likely to control Lee for? Because like Lee, I know the optics of the Roxy fight are really bad, but like she's been, you know, she got taken down 5 times on Montana De La Rosa, and she massively out controlled De La Rosa, who again, I would say Calvillo has a better top game than De La Rosa, but De La Rosa's top game is not bad. And, you know, she had not much trouble getting up. No one she's really had much trouble getting up against except Roxy. And if you look at when she did have trouble in that fight, it was kind of late when she was pretty tired in it. I'm not saying Calvillo can't take her down and control her. It's certainly in play. I just think, you know, Lee's a much bigger girl than she is. I think she's got a 5-inch reach advantage. She's 2 or 3 inches taller than her. Like, Lee's a real 125er, whereas I'm still a bit skeptical that Calvillo is. You know, one of the reasons I liked her against Andrade, I was just like, you know, there is some size parity here with her, and I thought maybe, you know, she might be able to drag her down in the fight, even though she didn't try to. And in terms of this, so it's like, yes, would I be shocked if Calvillo goes out there and just top times her? Not really, I guess. But I kind of think Lee's defensive grappling is maybe getting a bit too much shit. You know, she fought Ashley Evans Smith, who went 2 for 10 on takedowns against her, college wrestler. Montana De La Rosa, high school wrestling background, went 5 for 12, but, you know, again, couldn't really hold her down. Calder, we got her down 3 times, couldn't really control her. Went Murphy, couldn't control her. She's actually, believe it or not, for someone who's been taken down like 12 times in the UFC, she's actually out-controlled her opponents in the UFC. I don't expect her to out-control Lee, but I do think her being able to keep this on the feet or work back up is something that I think is likely. And I do favor Lee standing pretty significantly. And that's also part of it, because Lee's going to go forward. And what I don't like, when Calvillo gets in tight, her wrestling is really good. The problem for me is, like, once she starts getting hit, like you saw it in the Chikagian fight, she should have been able to take Caitlin Chikagian down. But as soon as she stopped getting comfortable in the pocket, you could see the entries were coming from about a mile away. And like, that's kind of what I worry about, especially since Lee is going to go forward here. I think this fight's around evens, to be honest, in my own head. What I like prop-wise, though, I do like Lee by decision is plus 200. I don't really think she has my... Like, I'm very confident she's not subbing Calvillo. And has Lee hurt anybody in the UFC? Like, I don't... Like,
not from memory.
Yeah.
Not from memory.
And then, like, on the other side of that, too, if you have one of the books that offers it, I'm seeing Calvillo no scorecards on Dimes has it right now at minus 120. I'm sure DraftKings will open that up. That's pretty good too, because I think Calvillo no scorecards. I mean, I think she's like, if the fight finishes, I would say it's like 70 to 75% in Calvillo's favor of finish. I know that sounds like crazy high, but I just kind of struggle to see Lee finishing this fight, to be honest with you. So I like Lee by decision, and if you have access to that no scorecards on Calvillo, I like that quite a bit as well.
Yeah, I love those props as well. And yeah, I do think that I think where we differ is, and I think you see this as well, is when Calvillo does get her to the ground. I do think that she'll have success in terms of controlling there. Again, in my opinion, the best BJJ practitioner at the perfect time of the career, matching up against each other here. I think that Calvillo should be able to go out there and get some control time and possibly a submission as well. So I'm very much looking forward to playing out to this. I honestly expected more people to be on the Calvillo side,
Me
but
too.
but again, once everybody does their research and stuff, they come up with their own conclusions, and I can completely understand the Lee side here. I think we're in agreement in terms of how it will play out if either side were to win this fight, right?
Yeah, and it's one of I think it's actually one of the better fights on the card, to be honest. Like, it's not something that like pops off on like a normal card, but like you look
Yeah,
at this card, it's a reasonably high level fight for
yeah.
female for WMMA fight, right? And look at the fights around it. I actually am looking forward to this quite a bit.
Yes, sir. All right, let's move on to the prelim headliner now. We got Thiago Moises going up against Joel Alvarez. In terms of odds, we got minus 250 on Moises and plus 210 on Joel Alvarez. And as soon as this fight was announced, I felt as though I needed to play Thiago Moises. But as handicappers and predictors and guys in our positions, we can't just blind bet spots. So I obviously jumped into tape here, and it still came out pretty impressed on the other side, right? Thiago Moises is definitely making improvements from a fight-to-fight basis. Not to mention his last fight, Islam Makhachev. Let's just call that shit a mulligan. Nobody's going to have a good performance against Makhachev, right? Great performance here against Alexander Hernandez, outstriking Hernandez on the feet, not really even having to use his jiu-jitsu much at all in that fight, which is what I thought he would have needed to win that fight. However, he really put a beating on Alexander in that fight with beautiful striking, combinations, good footwork, all that type of stuff. So he's definitely improving. Again, only 26 years old and has an amazing resume of fighters he's already gone up against. And now you throw Joel Alvarez into that fucking pool of fighters. You got to believe that Joel is probably, the bottom of the barrel here compared to the rest of the competition he's been going up against. Joel Alvarez almost like he has a glorified Homer Simpson approach, it seems, where he's almost losing every single one of his fights until he submits these guys. I'm sure Magic would love to hear me say that, but regardless, I do think that he's pretty much losing all of his fights until he wraps up a submission, right? The Danilo Belluardo fight gets controlled for like a round and a half until Belluardo just gasses out, gives up a reversal, and then gets just bombed on the ground. And then the Yakovlev fight and the Duffy fight were interesting ones just because like he was just ripping leg kicks until those guys decide to go for a desperation takedown, and then he just clamped onto a triangle or a guillotine, whatever the hell it was, and he was able to get those guys out of there. However, you think he's going to be able to submit Thiago Moises this year? No, I just don't see it. Unless it's like a crazy club and sub situation, because again, like he is the much taller fighter in this fight. That absolutely makes sense. And he has some pop on some of his kicks. That's a little bit of a concern. However, he's more of a one and doneer kind of guy, right? He's not throwing combinations or anything out there. He's just whipping shots out there to kind of get you to react to them, and then hopefully he can wrap you up in something. But I'd be surprised if he wraps up Thiago Moises in anything in this fight. I think if Moises goes out there and just leans on his wrestling, I think he'll be able to get Alvarez down and kind of just grind him out over 15 minutes, which is kind of why I'm on the Moises via decision train here, which is currently sitting at plus 110. His submission prop could potentially be alive at plus 445 because I think, again, obviously he should be much better on the ground than Joel Alvarez here. It's just the longer this fight is on the feet, I sweat it ever so slightly. Again, just the greenness of Joel Alvarez's striking game gives me more confidence in the Thiago Moises side here. But I like Moises, like him a lot. Probably one of my favorite spots on the card. I do have him a part of my lock of the night play already. But I think he wins this fight by decision. I think he grounds out Joel here. How do you feel about this matchup?
Yeah, I'm pretty fucking pissed about the line, if I'm being honest. I didn't play it early because I blasted Yakovlev big against Alvarez as a dog. I remember before that fight, I was just like, Alvarez has no way to win this fight that's not an armbar. I'm like, you're telling there's no way an armbar is going to happen from bottom here. Yakovlev's way too experienced. And then 2 minutes into the fight, he's armbarred and the fight's over. But like, I thought it was crazy that he was an underdog in that fight, and the market pumped him to being a favorite. And Moises off a loss. The market generally not too high on Moises. So I was thinking in my head, I'm like, I'll probably get minus 150 on Moises here, and instead it's gone the other way, and now we're at minus 250. I'm still thinking of playing it, to be honest. I agree with pretty much everything you said. Moises, people forget because he hasn't been like a proactive submission hunter in the UFC outside of the Michael Johnson fight, really. But like, this is a guy whose background is jiu-jitsu. He has excellent jiu-jitsu. If you put them in gis, him and Alvarez, he'd probably be minus 500 against them, literally, in a jiu-jitsu match. And so, you have that. You also seeing he's showing a bit more willingness to wrestle recently. Like, he took down Makhachev. He took Makhachev's back, actually, in that fight. He didn't have it for long, but, it's funny because he got his ass kicked, but I actually think he acquitted himself quite well, all things considered, in that fight. And so now he's here, and it's like, I think one takedown's pretty much around. I will eat my hat on stream next week if he gets armbarred by Joel Alvarez. Like, that is, I just do not see it. I cannot imagine him getting guillotined or armbarred here. And even on the feet, his striking is steadily improving. And you mentioned it. He outstruck Alex Hernandez. I bet Hernandez in that fight. And
yeah, me too. I do units on him there.
Yeah, same. And I was very, very impressed with how he looked in that fight. Hernandez is on a different level than anybody Alvarez has fought. All the guys Moises has fought in the UFC are on a different level than anybody Alvarez has fought. I think Moises debuted against Beneil Dariush, right? Yep. If I'm not mistaken. Like, what the fuck? Like, what kind of a debut is that? Like, Moises is good, man. I think he's going to win this fight on the feet. I think if the leg kicks give him issues, he's going to take Alvarez down and hold him there without too much issue. Kind of similar to, like, I actually think it's similar to the Holloway fight, except Holloway's game was more threatening to Moises than Alvarez's is, and he looked like a big favorite against Holloway in that fight. So, yeah, I mean, I think the line could be wider. I don't think he's too likely to sub Alvarez. So, a decision plus 100, I like quite a bit, to be honest with you. It could turn out that that's like a hindsight 60-65% outcome. So I like Moises. I like the money line. I don't advocate for parlays often, but I actually think if you want to throw a parlay in there, I think Moises is actually fine to include in it. Yeah, I like Moises a lot here.
Yeah, I'm right there as well. I was just quickly looking through Moises' regional record, and like the 2 losses that he has on the regional scene will more than likely go out there and beat a guy like Joel Alvarez. Robert Wadley, Wadley. If you guys aren't familiar with him, very good fighter from the PFL and those regional promotions. Even Jason Knight, Jason Knight in his prime probably could do some work here against Joel Alvarez as well. So
I think Jason Knight now could do some work against Joel Alvarez.
There you go. Don't let Magic hear this. All right, let's
he beat Evers regionally.
Did he? Oh yeah, he did over. Yeah. You're right. I love it. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. We got the main card coming up, actually. And I do want to take this time to remind the 116 live viewers that we currently have. Make sure you guys hit that like, hit that subscribe, and then check out the Club and Sub podcast, which is led by my guy John every Wednesday night, 10 p.m. Eastern. Link is in the description below for their YouTube channel. Make sure you guys check it out. A bunch of sharp guys on there. You're going to thank me for it later. Trust me. All right. Main card opener. Banger of a fight here. We got Song Yadong going up against Julio Arce. And pre-tape, I really expected to be on the Arce side, especially after I saw the odds. However, after running the tape, I just can't do it, man. Plus 120-ish now on Julio Arce. Minus 140-ish is return on Song Yadong. Seems like a fight where we might get like a Bull versus Matador type of situation. Maybe even Arce attempting to try to get some grappling going, as I think he has some decent jiu-jitsu. However, that performance that Song Yadong had against Casey Kenny was probably, close to career best. A very good job in terms of stuffing the takedowns and kind of being ahead of the game, where I thought that Casey would be the guy that would be a step ahead the entire time. However, Yadong really made it difficult for him to do so. Landed big shots. Obviously, we know he's a bit of a berserker when it comes to his striking style, and that usually breaks opponents. I could see Julio trying to take the Kyler Phillips route in terms of trying to stay on the outside and matador him here, but I think he's going to struggle mightily, especially one with the smaller cage. Not to mention Yadong. I thought he reached his peak, to be honest, before that Kenny fight, but again, he showed that he leveled up there. I feel like he'll be able to march down Julio Arce here. I don't think Arce will have much success in terms of getting out of the way of the big strikes, and then I think optically speaking, it's going to look really good to the judges having Song moving forward the entire time, throwing big bombs, landing some bombs at some times, and he has a damn good chin too, man. Like he can eat some good shots. And so even if Arce, finesses him into a nice combination or something like that, how much damage is that really going to dish out? And how much is it really going to sway the judges his way, especially when he's going to be on his back foot for the majority of this fight? At least that's how I see this fight going down. So I do like the Yadong side here. I do think he wins this fight via decision. He could clip the chin of Arce here again. Big hitter. Let's not overlook that spot. Like I said, Yadong via KO is currently sitting at plus 460, but I do think that this goes the full 15 minutes, and Yadong decision at plus 140-ish is not too bad. However, even minus 135, minus 140 on his money line is better considering, if you do lose the decision prop, because he knocks him out, you're still getting a damn good number at minus 135, minus 140, in my opinion. So I like Yadong by decision. How are you feeling about this one?
Yeah, I'm right there in lockstep with you. It's funny because when I looked at the lines last week, I usually look at the lines a week or two out, kind of identify spots that I think I'm going to be on. I was like, I'm almost definitely playing Arce here, even though traditionally, I've been on the Song train for most of his run. But like I had recalled like Arce being more of an outfighter and a guy who's going to stick and move more. But like I don't know why I thought that. I guess it's just he hasn't been very active. But that's not really his game. He kind of likes to draw people into exchanges, in the pocket and just kind of use his like slick boxing. And I think that's going to be kind of problematic against Song. Song will give him that fight if he wants it. And I do think Arce, technically speaking, is probably a better boxer, or certainly a better boxer than Song is. The thing is, I think Song is faster than Arce is by a good bit. He's got faster hands. I think he hits a lot harder than Arce does. And Song is so durable, man. I mean, has any fight aged better than Song Yadong and Marlon Vera? Like, he decided to go to fucking war with Vera for 3 rounds and came out of it with a win. Not many people do that, like, that's what Vera specializes in, is taking people into like dark waters and drowning them, and he didn't get drowned there. Yeah, I think it's a close fight. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, Arce could win this fight and it wouldn't shock me. But I don't think Arce reliably outvolumes him here. I think Song's the bigger hitter, and I think it's going to look that way in exchanges. I think Song has much more finishing upside, if I'm being completely honest. And I think he's faster. Plus, as you mentioned, you saw a level of Song's game we hadn't seen before, which was good to see since he's 23 and it shows he's improving. But Song basically played a back foot game against Kenny, which, it's funny because I bet Song in that fight. And when the fight started, I was like, oh my God, what is he doing? He's going to get chewed up. But he looked great instead. It was really surprising. Song's an improving guy. I like him a lot. Yeah, in this fight, I'd probably cap it about minus 150 just because I do think Arce is more technically clean than him, but you have to err on the power side of Song here. I don't really think Arce has much chance to have grappling success. Like, in theory, he could sub him if he hurts him or whatever, but Song's a good defensive grappler. I know people look at the Stammen fight, but it's like Cody Stammen is on a fucking other level of wrestling than Arce is,
Mm-hmm.
And even in that fight, Stammen couldn't control him the first 2 rounds of that fight. It wasn't until round 3 when he started to slow down that Stammen actually started holding him on the mat. And so, yeah, I like Song here. In terms of props, I'm seeing this now, but again, I'm going to throw you guys a no scorecards if you have action to it. I'm seeing Song at plus money on no scorecards. That seems fucking wild to me. And then beyond that, yeah, if you want to take a side, I think Song by decision at plus money is pretty good. I also think goes the distance at like minus 180 or minus 1. I'm seeing minus 158 at FanDuel if you have that. That's a pretty good spot as well. I don't think it's super likely that one of them finishes, but I do think if one finishes, it's likely to be Song.
I like it. Yeah, there are some slight favorites on this card that I'm pretty much like in love with, thinking that it's a really good spot for them. And obviously, Song Yadong is definitely one of those guys as well. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. We got 4 fights left to go. Got to wrap this pitch up in the next 10 to 15 minutes. But we got Miguel Baeza going up against Chaos Williams. In terms of odds, we're looking at minus 1. Where did it go? Oh, there we go. Minus 140 for Baeza, plus 120 the return on Chaos Williams. And I've been looking for a guy to fade Chaos Williams ever since he starched Abdul Razak Al Hassan the way that he did. I thought Samuelsberger would be the guy. I didn't bet Samuelsberger there, but great performance from Chaos. They're showing that it could go 50 minutes and show a decent game. Good striking, good volume, good damage from minute 1 to minute 15. However, now he's going up against a much better striker and a huge step up in competition, in my opinion, against a guy like Miguel Baeza. I really want to pull the trigger on Baeza, to be honest. However, the ability for Chaos to land a bomb on his opponents is insane, and the amount of power that he carries is ridiculous as well. This is almost like the epitome of a KO or bust type of fight for Chaos, though, because if he doesn't get Baeza out there, he's going to get his lead leg chewed up, and I think even if Baeza goes out there and tries to get this takedowns here, his BJJ is going to be much more than anything Chaos has experienced to this point, and I think that a submission here for Baeza is very, very live. specifically, like his submission prop is sitting around plus 600, which I think is a little bit crazy because I think they're miles apart on the ground here, and I think Baeza can absolutely get the fight here. Could be a live betting opportunity as well. If Chaos does have success in that first round and Baeza is just kind of just biding his time, maybe throwing out a couple calf kicks and leg kicks to try to slow down Chaos and open up a little bit more later in the fight. So I would definitely keep an eye on this on the live betting line. If you can get Baeza plus money going into the second round, I think there's a very good shot that he wins the second and third rounds here. But yeah, I like Baeza here. Again, I just need to get over my fear of those guys that can just end your night with one punch. Derek Lewis, Chaos Williams, those are the main guys that come to mind here. So fading them is always a bit of a scary task to do here. Baeza, rightful favorite. Think he gets the job done. I like Baeza by sub plus 600. That's a prop that I'll likely be sprinkling here. So, yeah, official prediction will likely be Baeza's second round sub, and I'll be taking that submission prop plus 600. How do you see this one going down?
Yeah, oh God, it's a weird fight because I actually agree with you in the grappling completely, and I think if Baeza is smart, he's going to come out here and just dive on legs from minute one.
Yeah,
I think there's a huge gap there. Now, it's possible Chaos has gotten better since the last time we saw him grapple, but I do think if Baeza wants to take him down and dominate him there, he can. And so that's why I can't play Chaos, because to be honest with you, I actually think the striking is pretty interesting in this fight. I think Baeza has better tools striking wise. Obviously he's got those calf kicks, which are lethal. He has good power, but I think he does a lot of stuff on the feet that Chaos can exploit pretty massively. Chaos he's technically a mess, but his process to striking is actually pretty good. It tends to be just a counter blitz type style where it's like he waits for you to go and then he blitzes forward. And what bothers me with Baeza is his response to guys countering him is to either step into the pocket with a leg kick or to just back up straight with a high guard. And I kind of think both of those things could be problematic if Chaos is going forward, because he doesn't really move his head off the center line. He tends to use the guard, and that's going to mean he's going to be there to get clipped by Chaos if he throws around the guard there. And if he steps in on a leg kick, he is begging to be countered here. And I don't want to say Baeza has a weak chin. I don't think that. Brown obviously hits hard, but we've seen him hurt before. So, and we also saw that, when he's been put on the back foot, in particular on the Ponzinibbio fight, as soon as Ponzinibbio realized he wasn't going to get countered if he went forward, he just stayed in his face and just took over the fight. And so I think on the feet, I honestly, like I said, I think Baeza's got better tools, but I think Chaos has the tools to win this fight standing. I'm not saying I would favor him drastically or anything, but I think it's very close standing, and I think the KO is very live. But again, I mean, with the grappling upside of being a potential minus 500 for path for Baeza, it's like you can't bet Chaos Williams here, right? I think Baeza should grapple. I don't trust him to. If I did, I would be on him at this number. What I do like in this fight, so I like that Baeza subline too, to be honest, because again, if he grapples, that might look like a hindsight 40% outcome, right? It might just turn out that one takedown is a fight for him. So plus 600 seems kind of crazy to me. What I do like, though, I think the under 2.5 at minus 130, minus 140 is a pretty good look. Look, on the feet, Chaos is going to have a chance to finish this fight. And, it's not like Baeza doesn't crack either. Chaos is there to be hit. He seems durable, but he can get cracked. But I think he can finish standing, and I think Baeza can finish on the mat fairly easily. So I like the under here, and I like Baeza by submission.
You know what? I can't believe I didn't even think about the under 2.5 for this fight. That is a damn good look.
Yeah,
under 2.5. Yeah, that is a damn good look. I can't believe I didn't even think about that. Yeah, fuck. You thank you, John. That's why I love doing these shows, because there are sometimes where a total or a prop or something will slip my mind, and I love chopping it up with you, Cody, and obviously anybody who I have on the Ultimate Wayne show to bring those to my attention. But yeah, that's a damn good look in my opinion. So they're definitely finishing upside for both guys here, and to get it around minus 120, minus 130, I don't think is a bad look either. So yeah, I like your case for Chaos here, man. The guy could definitely crack and get that dub, but I'd rather take that under 2.5, because if this fight hits the mat, man, I think it could be one-way traffic here. I really like Baeza on the ground.
Yeah, I mean, Chaos was getting grappled bad by guys regionally, and I kind of was threw that out before the Pereira fight, but the 2 times Pereira took him down, he took his back with no issue at all, really.
Shout out to my guy DXJC56 here. Remember the last guy that threw a naked leg kick against Chaos? R.I.P. Al Hassan. Yeah, I don't think Al Hassan is awake yet. Let's just put it like that. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. We got Felicia Spencer going up against Leah Letson. Talk about a time slot here to fucking put this fight at, but it is what it is. At least it's during the day for us. In terms of odds, we got -300 on Spencer, +250 on Leah Letson, and I was really thinking going into this fight that I'd have a free square in terms of picking Felicia Spencer as a potential parlay spot here, because I don't know why, but my memory was just like Leah Letson is garbage. She sucks. You know, she's going to roll over and die in this fight. But after writing the tape, I feel like she could be a little bit live here. You know, obviously a lot of Felicia Spencer's success depends on her being able to drag the fight to the ground. If not, we saw what happens in the Norma Dumont fight. And Leah Letson, in my opinion, for some reason, it seemed like I remember her as one of those girls that would just get taken down easily and get out of there. However, I think she has a slightly better striking game here, decent volume, decent output, good enough movement, in my opinion. You know, not like a Miguel Baeza type of striker I'm calling Leah Letson here, but enough to be able to be the better striker against Felicia Spencer, which is not, you know, much at all that you really need. And then in terms of the takedowns, which is where my concern lays, if Letson gets taken down here, what she's shown in the past before is that she works back to her feet pretty easily. Like she doesn't really settle on bottom. She gets back to her feet. However, the difference here is Felicia Spencer is probably the best BJJ specialist, best top control specialist that she's fought to this point in her career. So that is a little bit of a concern. Leah Letson obviously been out of the cage for 3 years now. Last time we saw her compete was on the Ultimate Fighter finale of the season that she was on. That was the season that Mason Kiasan won. So about 3 years ago was the last time we saw her, and she was able to pick up a victory over Yulia Stoliarenko. Since then, she had to deal with a plethora of health issues. Her thyroid was off or something like that. Her mitochondria was off. Like she couldn't even like cut weight properly or anything like that. It was her body was a complete mess. Luckily, she was able to find a specialist. They've been able to fix things. And just by skimming through her IG page, man, she's in much better shape than we've ever seen her in the past. Like she always used to have a little bit of flab, a little bit of meat on her. But here now, she looks in tremendous shape compared to what we've been seeing before. So I'm very interested to see what kind of fighter we're going to be getting this time. Last thing I'll say before I swing it on over to you, John, the Norma Dumont fight, and you're kind of somebody that brought this up to my attention as well, where like it didn't look like Felicia went for any takedowns in the fight, but like I feel as though if you watch that fight, you'll see that there are entry attempts from Felicia Spencer, but Norma does a really good job in terms of kind of shucking those attempts off, digging the underhooks before the clinch is fully engaged, and then kind of redirecting her back to the cage while Norma Dumont reclaims the center of the cage. So it's not like Felicia didn't try to take her down. She did, but Norma Dumont had a great game plan in terms of nullifying that. Hopefully Leah Letson is able to kind of implement something similar. Again, not really high hopes here, especially considering she's a +250 underdog, but taking her by decision, which I think is now sitting at +400. Letson by decision, actually +385, +420, depending on where you're looking at. Not too bad of a stab, right? Is she going to finish Felicia Spencer? More than likely not, because we saw 25 minutes of Amanda Nunes versus Felicia Spencer. We saw 15 minutes of Felicia Spencer against Chris Cyborg. Leah Letson's not going to be the person to finish her here. So I think her best way to win is decision. And I might have to take a little bit of a sprinkle, man. Again, if Felicia can't get her down, or sorry, if she does get her down but can't keep her down, I think the standing is going to favor Letson here, and she could make it much, much closer than the odds indicate here. So I don't at all think that Felicia Spencer is a free square here at -300. I think proceed with caution. I think Letson is live. My prediction is that Felicia will get the takedown and get that TKO or that submission, just because this is the best fighter, like I said, that Letson has faced when it comes to the BJJ realm. But if she's not, Letson's going to make this damn close, and that decision prop is very interesting. So prediction is Spencer. Bet will likely be Letson by decision. How do you see this one?
Yeah, anytime you see Felicia Spencer -330 against a warm body, you kind of do a double take.
Yeah.
It's just, look, I don't rate Spencer particularly highly. The one thing I'll say about her is I do think her top game is excellent. When she can get fights there, Spencer on top's got nasty jiu-jitsu and nasty ground and pound. The problem is she's a terrible wrestler. Like you touched on it, and you're right. She didn't get credited with any takedown against Vince Dumont, but you're right. She tried to set up entries, but she's just a bad wrestler. And, when she gets to the clinch, if she can't just like drag you down, like just muscle you down to the mat, she doesn't really have a plan too. Like she's not going to come off a body lock to a single or anything like that. She's not doing anything really creative in there. I will say, like you touched on it a bit, but like this is a different level of grappling than Letson's ever seen. And I kind of think, even though I think Letson will try to scramble up, I think there's a strong possibility that if she ends up on her back, it's just going to be bad news. You see this all the time when someone takes this kind of a step up in level of grappling. But I also, I don't think the Spencer takedowns are necessarily a given. I expect she'll get them, but like, I agree. If she doesn't, I can't favor like against anybody who's going to throw decent volume. It's just tough for me to favor Spencer. She's so hittable. Her striking itself is just really awkward and poor. It's coming from all kinds of weird angles. She's not generating any real power behind it at all. And so, yeah, I mean, I kind of favor Letson on the feet as well. I'm not going to play a money line just because, again, it's like if it turns out Spencer can get takedowns easily, she might look like a huge favorite in hindsight. But something I think is an decent angle here is if you take the Spencer ITD plus 200 and then combine it with the Letson by decision and like close to plus 400, you're really just covering the only way you can lose that is Letson ITD, which I'm pretty sure is not happening also, or Spencer decision, which a Spencer decision could happen, but I honestly think if Spencer gets her in the position she needs to, she's probably going to finish this fight at a high clip. So it's like that's an interesting way where you can kind of throw a bit of change on each, and you just basically take the chance that Spencer doesn't win by decision, which I think I'm pretty open to doing.
Yeah, I do think that, like I said, if she can establish that top control, I think it will be one-way traffic. If she's not able to, then it'll likely be going more so in the Letson favor. So, yeah, interested to see the fight play out. Again, kind of lowish level fight, but when you're into the game as deep as we are, yeah, we're interested to see this one play out. All right, co-main event time. We got Ben Rothwell going up against Marcos Rogerio de Lima. In terms of odds, we got -1, close to -160 now for Ben Rothwell. Plus 140 is to return on de Lima. I do like the Rothwell side of things here. I know he's 40 years old. I know he gives up leg kicks. I know de Lima is a banshee in that first round. He can definitely get him out of there. But if he thinks he's going to go in there and do the same thing that he did to Maurice Green, did the same thing that he did against Adam Wizardchek, I don't think it's going to be that easy. I think we'll see more resistance from Rothwell here. I think he'll be able to keep this fight standing. And then from there, I think eventually Rogerio de Lima will break and we'll see Ben Rothwell go out there and get that finish, whether it's a choke off a desperation takedown or just when Ben Rothwell turns it on, he could definitely put it on you. And I do think he has the knockout power, especially against a guy like de Lima who, will have cardio issues once he starts to stress. Obviously, he looked great in the Maurice Green fight where you're getting close to 14 minutes of control time. So obviously, you're not going to be able to go out there and gas out, but you are going to gas out when you're not getting the takedowns, when you're stressing out on the feet, when you're on your back foot. And I think that's what Ben Rothwell will be able to do here if he's able to survive that first round. So possible live betting opportunity. Wait for the ending of the first round. Hit Ben Rothwell at possible plus money. Or even pre-fight, Ben Rothwell inside the distance is a spot that I'm very much liking here at plus 160-ish. I think he gets de Lima out of there at a pretty good clip. So I like Rothwell inside the distance. How are you seeing this one?
Yeah, I'm on the other side. I actually bet de Lima. Very small, just because, look, the potential for de Lima mental collapse and finish is always very, very high with him. But I guess my view is I think de Lima is a fairly underrated heavyweight. We remember the moments of his collapses the most just because it's happened so many times. But, the guy's actually a very good striker. It's a weird style of striking, but he's super effective. He's got great leg kicks. He's very fast. He's very powerful. And he's actually not that easy to hit on the feet. On top of which, it's like, I get the Rothwell volume argument, and he could try to volume him up, but my experience, it's very hard to get volume off a guy who is stinging you every time you come in. And so I kind of think Lima's style is probably going to suppress some of that volume a bit. And the other side is it's like Rothwell has looked really bad since he came back from suspension. He looked okay against Ivanov, but he hasn't really looked great since then. You look at the OSP fight, he pretty much gassed out there and almost got finished by OSP at heavyweight, who is tragic. The Tybura fight, he looked good for a round and then horribly gassed out in that fight and got dominated the last 2 rounds. And so it's like Ben, like 3 years ago, I would have felt is pretty reliable to out cardio de Lima here. In this fight, I'm not really as sure about that. Look, I have the obvious concerns that if de Lima ends up on his back, he's going to get forearm choke or something. But, but the thing is, it's like Rothwell.
He's going to get tickled to submission.
Right. Like Rothwell's jiu-jitsu, though, it's almost all front chokes,
Yeah.
He's not really a guy who is like going into the guard, passing your guard, setting up
arm triangles and shit.
Like
yeah.
Yeah.
Could you imagine?
Yeah, and on the other side, I actually do think if de Lima can hit takedowns here, he can probably hold Rothwell down as well. So I think it's an interesting fight. Look, I could never bet him big against Ben here, but I do think, de Lima's a bit younger. I think he's more explosive and more dangerous at this point. And I kind of think unless Rothwell can kind of drain him in the clinch, I'm not sure Rothwell is going to get off the kind of volume required to gas the Lima out in this fight. But again, I'm not like super passionate about it. I understand the Rothwell arguments. And like I said, I do think, there's a decent chance Rothwell's going to make him face adversity and he's going to collapse again. So like I have one unit on Lima. In terms of props, it's another one where I like the under here, to be honest. I like the under 2.5. It's about minus 150. Like if it's going the distance, I mean, it would be weird to go to the distance. It means it probably looks like the Maurice Green fight, but I agree with you. I don't think that happens because I don't think Rothwell on top of Lima, if Rothwell's on top of Lima for significant time, I think he's finishing him, in my opinion. And on the other side of things, I don't expect Lima to get those kind of takedowns on Rothwell. And so I think they're probably going to swing. Lima's a huge hitter, and Rothwell can still crack a bit too. So I think the opportunities for a finish will be there. In terms of, other stabs here, I think a shot. If you can have one of the books that has Rothwell sub over plus 400, I think that's decent. I think Lima KO 1 is also a decent look. You're going to get a plus 500 there. And I'd say, even though I'm on Lima, I do think it is probably the majority of his win equity is going to come early in this fight. So yeah, Rothwell 1, Lima 1, under. Those are the sides that I like here.
I like it. Again, we are on opposite sides here in terms of the money line, but I definitely understand your argument. But hopefully Big Ben is able to go out there and do what Big Ben does and gives us a nice little dance in the aftermath as well. All right. Getting us to the main event. Let's just quickly get the housekeeping stuff out of the way. Shout out to the 130 live viewers here. Make sure you guys hit that like, hit that subscribe, and then show my guy John some love as well. The Club and Sub podcast is the podcast he hosts every Wednesday night, 10 p.m. Eastern. Him, Luke from Sparring with Reality Betting, Danny Legs, and our guy C as well. Make sure you guys go check them out Wednesday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern. Link to the YouTube channel is in the description below, so make sure you guys check it out. John, Max Holloway, Yair Rodriguez, minus 650 for the blessed one, and plus 475 the return on Yair Rodriguez here. Now, it seems like one of those fights where Max Holloway should be able to go out there and do what Max Holloway does. I give Yair 2 rounds to possibly pull off some sort of Hail Mary KO type of shit. I know people are going to be like, oh, look at the Korean zombie fight. He was able to get him out of there in the last second. But like pacing and the activity in that fight is nowhere near what I think we're going to be seeing here from the Holloway fight. We almost saw it in the Jeremy Stevens fight, right? 3-round fight where Jeremy Stevens was close to 10-8ing Yair Rodriguez in that 3rd round because Yair was just gassing out because he was, he was having difficulty dealing with the pace and pressure that Jeremy was putting on him, keeping him on his back foot, moving forward, leg kicks, all that type of shit. Now imagine that times infinity here with Max Holloway, who's going to be staying in Yair's face, pushing him on his back foot the entire time. Can Yair pull off a Hail Mary KO? Absolutely. Just given his unorthodox nature and some of the power that he has in his kicks, legs, punches, elbows, all that shit, he could find that chin of Holloway. But Holloway never been knocked out yet, right? Like he's taken so much goddamn damage, but he still does not crack. He doesn't show any signs of being even close to finished, which is crazy. I like Holloway here. I parlayed him at minus 500 is what I got, to be honest. I parlayed him with Thiago Moises at minus 238. I believe it was minus 140 is where the odds I got on that. If you want to play it from a props perspective, shout out to FanDuel, shout out to DraftKings. Playing that round 4 or 5 decision is probably the best way to go and get the most bang for your buck on Max Holloway. I'm going to be playing the round props as well. Like I don't know if I'll do round 3. I think it'll take at least 15 minutes for him to, get the reads on Yair and then really start to open up and get that output going. I think in round 4 or round 5, he'll probably get him out of there though. So like Holloway inside the distance and Holloway late. If you are liking Yair, like I said, by KO is probably the best way to go about it, which is plus 900, plus 1100, depending on the spot size you're looking at. So not too bad of a hedge opportunity if you are overexposed on Max Holloway in this position. But I do like Holloway, and I think he goes out there and gets the dang job done. I will say this before I flip on over to you, John. I did have a small bet on Calvin Kattar back in January against Max Holloway, and I'm sure a lot of people are like, this guy has absolutely no idea what the fuck he's talking about. Before that fight, and even now, I do think that Calvin Kattar is the better technical striker, But Max Holloway just has that God mode in MMA where he could just put that volume and that pressure on you, and he will overwhelm you and then eventually break you, like we saw in that Kattar fight. So I don't regret the Kattar shot, given what we knew pre-fight. But now after this, that was a performance of a lifetime for Max Holloway last time around. Maybe he sees and replicates that here against Zaire again. But I think Max wins. Max round 4 or 5 decision, best prop here. How do you like this one?
Yeah, I was actually on Max big against Kattar in that fight. I love Max Holloway. I'm a huge Max Holloway fan, but I feel like the MMA gods are like laughing at me right now and just trying to dangle like a carrot in front of my face with this line pumping up to like minus 800 in spots. It's just like, because like Max is an incredible boxer. He's ungrappleable, and in addition to the insane output, he's also a chin bully. Like the guy just doesn't seem to be able to be hurt. Like he is just not afraid to get hit and go forward. And so it's like I keep looking at it, it's getting wider, and I'm like, man, Yair Rodriguez is fucking good, man. Like, should it really be this wide? And like, probably not. But also, like, I'm not, I'm not really dying to jump into the value trap, if you get what I'm saying. To go like, because I think he's going to kill Yair. Personally, I think he is going to. I think early in this fight, Yair may give him, maybe the first round or two will be competitive, but I do think it's only a matter of time until Holloway kind of takes over this fight. Something I will say about the cardio of Yair is I think it's being a little underrated, just because, I mean, the Stevens fight happened, but he also like threw about 1 million strikes trying to finish Stevens in round 2 of that fight before he gassed. And if you just wind the clock back one fight prior to that, he fought at altitude and went a full 5 and finished the fight, obviously, at the last second of that fight. So like, I do think his cardio is probably okay, but again, probably okay against, maybe the guy with the best cardio in MMA history, so it's just like, I think the line is probably a little wide, but it's like the margins here are so thin, because it's like, what chance do you put a Yair finish on Max? Like, I almost think you have to give Yair like a 15% chance to finish like anybody he fights, just because Yair is dangerous, and he'll probably have a moment or two over the course of 5 with Max, but also, Dustin couldn't get Max out of there, and he wobbled him bad 3 times in that fight. Max has fought.
Yeah, that's the closest. I think that's the closest we've ever seen him to get finished. Honestly,
it wasn't that close. That's the thing, right? Dustin hurt him, but it was like he hurt him, and 2 seconds later, Max was back going forward again, like, each time. And it's like that's kind of the problem. It's like it's so hard for me to like, outside of like a spinning wheel kick or something crazy, it's so hard for me to draw up, the way Yair wins this fight by KO. It can happen. I do think it's live, and I don't want to, discount that possibility. And I don't think, I might throw like $50 or $25 on Yair KO plus 1,100, just because, I do think that's the majority of his win equity. And I think, like I said, you got to give him a 10 to 15% chance to finish anybody he fights, pretty much. But it's hard for me to feel passionate about it. Max is Alex Volkanovski's 1A on the best featherweights on planet Earth. Max Holloway's 1B. And then there's a big, big gap before we hit anybody else, in my opinion. Max should take care of business here pretty easily. I could say one of my biggest regrets is not laying Max minus 350 in this fight. I actually thought, I saw a couple tweets like, Yair shouldn't be plus 275 against anyone. And I thought I might get a good number on it, because but now here we are, minus 800. So
it just spun out of control.
But it's also like kind of a weird fight, right? In terms of like props, because I really don't think Yair is going to go and box Max in the pocket. If he does that, he's a fucking crazy person. I think he's going to try to play the outside game. And if he does that, there's a reasonable chance he's just going to play the outside game and clearly lose 5 rounds and it goes the distance, So it's kind of weird. Like, I'm not passionate about the over. I don't favor the over. I guess if I was taking a stab, it would be Holloway ITD plus 125, because, there's always the chance, you never know. I don't expect him to sub Yair, but he's guillotined a couple guys. He could guillotine him off, a desperation shot. I don't see anything I really love in the fight, if I'm being honest. Like, Yair KO plus 1,100, okay, but again, I really don't think it's happening. So it's I guess I'll say Max ITD, but I wouldn't be shocked if it goes the distance. I really wouldn't be. So I think it's just gonna be a fun fight to watch, even though I think Max should be a big favorite. I think, it's a fight that's guaranteed to, or not guaranteed, but should have fireworks, Max is going to push a pace like he always does. So it'll be a fun fight, but I'm not really dying to get money down on it.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how Max deals with those first 10 minutes or so, where he's going to have to kind of adjust to that unorthodox nature of Yair. But after that, it should be all Max. I'd be surprised if Yair wins any rounds outside of rounds 1 and 2, and even rounds 1 and 2, right? Like it's all based on him hurting Max to win it, because he's not winning minutes in that fight, right? Like we know Max is going to be moving forward and throwing volume, so it's going to have to be a big movement. Go ahead.
There is one guy in the UFC who is winning against Max Holloway, and he's the champion.
Oh, true. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Volkanovski is like the only dude that will probably beat him at this point in time. All right. That is a wrap on the breakdowns. Let's quickly get through the 3 best prop bets, and then we'll get my guy John out of here, who really needs to get out of here. I apologize, John, for going this long. But
I don't have any emails, I don't think so.
Exactly. All right. First and foremost, as I always do, announcing tomorrow's guest for the Ultimate Weigh-In Show. And it's been a minute since I had my boy on, but I had to bring him back for this week. We have my guy Adam Newsom, or Newsom MMA. You guys obviously know him from MMA Play 365. I work on the Tape Index with him as well. Very good friend of mine, probably my first ever friend in the MMA Twitter world, and MMA betting Twitter world, I should say. And we've been really good friends for over the past 4 years now. Obviously business partners as well to a certain extent, but very good capper, very good insights. So I can't wait to break down the fights with him. I know he's going to be over there in the UK. I should have just said this right off the bat. Special start time for tomorrow, considering he's in the UK, so he doesn't have to do this shit at like 2 a.m. in the morning. We're going to be doing it at 4 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. 4 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. So about 2 hours after the weigh-ins wrapped up, we will be doing the Ultimate Weigh-In Show. So make sure you guys tune in tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern. All right, let's get into the 3 best prop bets. As soon as I can pull this up, I'll start things off. First and foremost, Baeza by sub plus 600. Got to take a little bit of a shot on that. I will actually preface the 3 best prop bets by saying this. I think John even said it before we went live. A little bit sketchy for prop bets, to be honest. We've got to really dig for some spots here. So I'm going to be hammering or frying away on some of these long shot parlays, but I do think they have some good chances of hitting Baeza by sub. Again, if he knows what's best for him, dive for legs immediately, try to get this fight to the ground, and then use a jiu-jitsu game, which is far superior to what Chaos Williams, brings to the table. Secondly, I got Rothwell inside the distance, plus 160. I think he survives early against Lima and then gets him out of there probably in the second or third round, maybe off of a desperation takedown, sinks in his 5-finger choke, whatever the hell he calls it, or something like that, or even just puts that Ben Rothwell power on him. And we know, again, if Lima, things aren't going his way, the guy starts to slow down, and I feel like Ben Rothwell is the perfect hammer to the nail that is Lima tomorrow night. Lastly, Colin Anglin by decision plus 535. Got to take a little bit of a shot on that just because of, the margin of error in Sean Woodson's fight are so fucking slim, especially considering if you get 1 more minute of control time or something against him, you could easily edge out a round. And I trust Anglin to be able to go out there and do something like that. So some crazy long shot props for you guys on my end, as you guys are used to. Hopefully we can cash at least one of these so we can profit on the props here. John, you're up next, brother.
Well, I like yours better than mine now. But first up, we got Mark Diakiese by decision. I'm on Diakiese on the money line, but I don't think he's going to finish. I like the decision side. I don't really see how he loses minutes in this fight. I think decision's probably closer to a 55% outcome than the implied 43% that it is. So Diakiese by decision. Next up, we got Thiago Moises via decision as well. I don't think Alvarez presents a ton of issues for Moises, and I think if Moises takes the path of least resistance, it's likely going to be a grappling-based path. And I just don't think a Moises submission is very likely here. So Moises by decision plus 110, I think that's a great number. And last up, we got Andrea Levi via decision. I think it's a close fight. I think it's a very close fight. I think it's about a 50-50 fight, if I'm being honest. I just don't really see a lot of finishing upside for Lee, to be honest. So at 2-1, I'm willing to take the stab here. I think it's closer to 40%. So yeah, War Lee.
All right, there you guys go. Unfortunately, I don't have Cody's prop bets, but I'll be sure to retweet it whenever he tweets them out. But yeah, there you guys have it. 3 best prop bets for me and John. John, I'll give you the platform here on the back end. Anything you want to say before I wrap it up?
No, just enjoy the show this weekend, guys. Check out my show at 10 p.m. Eastern every Wednesday night. It's in the description below. And I promise the takes were not that hot this week. I have a couple burners next week that I'm holding on to. So next week will be much better, and takes will be a lot hotter. And hopefully we'll win some money. Can't get much worse than last week.
Exactly. It's only up from there. I love it. I love it. All right. Once again, tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern, Ultimate Wayne Show. Me and Newsome MMA from MMA Play 365. Make sure you guys tune in for that. And don't get caught napping. 2 p.m. Eastern start time for the fights tomorrow or on Friday. Sorry, Saturday. I don't know why I think today's Friday. Fucking throwing me off. Saturday, 2 p.m. Eastern start time for the fights. Don't get caught napping. All right, John. Appreciate you hopping on as always. Shout out to the 150-ish live viewers that we had. Good luck on your bets, and I'll see you guys tomorrow for the Ultimate Wayne Show. War Cynthia Calvillo. Fuck you, John. Fuck Andrioli. War Cynthia Calvillo. Let's go.
KGB. Peace, guys.